You're probably scrolling through a dozen listings, wondering if you're about to pour cash into a machine that will end up sitting idle in the corner while you still have to rent a shop for the occasional job. I get that hesitation. The last thing you want is an air compressor that's either too noisy for a home garage or too small to keep up with a growing workshop. Link is in the description if you want to check the product details on Amazon, and I'm going to walk through why the Ingersoll UP 6 7.5 might actually be the sweet spot, or why it could be a misfit for you. First off, the biggest deal breaker for most people is sound. A lot of compressors scream louder than a jackhammer, making it impossible to run them while you're watching a TV show or talking to a neighbor. This model runs at about 65 dB, which is roughly the noise level of a normal conversation. In practical terms, that means you can set it up in a finished garage and still have a decent chat with a friend without shouting over the machine. The whisper-quiet operation comes from an ODP electric motor combined with an air-cooled aftercooler that also keeps the discharge air from heating up too much, which helps protect downstream tools. Now, let's talk capacity. An 80-gallon horizontal tank sounds massive, but it's really about how long you can run tools before the pressure drops. With 28 CFM at 125 psi, you're looking at a steady stream of air that can handle a spray gun, a pneumatic wrench, and a tire inflator all at once without the pump constantly kicking in. In a real-world scenario, I've seen small auto body shops use a similar setup to paint a whole car in a single session without the motor cycling every few seconds. The auto start/stop control on this unit means the motor only fires when pressure drops below the preset threshold, which translates to less electricity use and a longer motor life. If you have a dedicated 230V single-phase line in your garage, installation is pretty straightforward. Just hook up the power, mount the unit on a sturdy floor, and you're ready to go. The NEMA 1 rating means the motor is sealed against dust and moisture, a nice touch if you keep the compressor in a space that isn't climate-controlled. The ASMR tank adds a layer of safety, which is something you'll appreciate if you ever have kids or pets around and want to avoid accidental overpressurization. Who should consider buying this? If you run a home-based woodworking shop that regularly uses a nail gun, a die grinder, and an air sander, the 7.5 HP motor provides enough torque to keep up with demand, and the quiet operation won't make your family think you've installed a construction site in the basement. Auto hobbyists who do occasional paint jobs, brake bleeding, or tire inflation will also benefit from the tank size. You won't be waiting for the motor to catch up every few minutes. Small business owners who need a reliable, semi-permanent air source but don't want to lease a commercial-grade unit will find the value in the combination of capacity, noise level, and durability. On the flip side, this isn't the right pick for someone who only inflates a couple of bike tires a month or needs a portable solution for on-site jobs. The unit weighs well over 300 pounds and sits on a fairly large footprint, so moving it around is a chore. If you don't already have a 230V outlet, you'll have to pay for an electrician to install one, which adds hidden cost. Also, the price point sits higher than entry-level compressors that might be sufficient for light weekend projects. In that sense, the UP 6 7.5 could feel like overkill, and you'd be better off with a 5 HP, 30-gallon model that still runs quietly enough for a garage but costs less and takes up less space. Another practical consideration is maintenance. The unit includes an oil filter and separator element, which means you'll need to change the oil and filter periodically, something you wouldn't have to think about with a completely oil-free model. That's not a deal-breaker, but it does add a small, recurring task. On the upside, the aftercooler not only reduces heat but also helps the oil stay cleaner longer, extending the intervals between changes. If you're comfortable with a bit of routine upkeep, this isn't a major drawback. Let's address the common fear that big tanks mean big bills. Because of the auto start/stop feature, the motor only runs when the tank pressure falls below a set point, often around 100 psi. In everyday use, that means the compressor cycles far less than a constant line unit, shaving off a noticeable amount on your electricity bill. I've run the numbers for a typical workshop that uses the compressor 8 hours a day, 3 days a week, and the consumption stays well under the cost of running a comparable 5 HP unit non-stop. In short, the Ingersoll UP 6 7.5 hits a sweet spot for serious DIYers and small shop owners who value low noise, steady airflow, and a tank that can hold its own through